Now we're going to go through the example bonanza. These are a whole host of examples that will actually explain companies that have done different types of MVPs that I think will be helpful to you. Now these are not all examples that, every example in the world, but this is a pretty good cross-section of examples, and it should get your mind thinking about it. Now what I would always recommend is if you're interested in one of these MVPs and think, hey, I need to go out and test landing pages, you Google it. There are tons of great resources on how to use and test landing pages. Growthhack.com has a great online learning series that can help you teach about landing pages or whatever it might be, or prototyping. There's things online you can learn about prototyping from all sorts of resources. So this is merely to basically get your interest piqued on what kind of MVP to build and fit it within your business. So again, I identified 13 categories, we'll call it, of MVPs. Now, some of these may overlap, some of these may not seem like MVPs. Again, interviews is on the list, which is something that we've kind of covered already, but these are just an example of different types of MVPs. I'm going to walk through them, give my opinions on them, and if you have questions along the way of what they mean, please let me know. Again, all the materials will be available to you after the class and also online. And again, I would say this, I'm not here to go deep into any of these ones. I'm more to basically make sure I've covered it all for you so you have an idea about them. And the internet is a magical, wonderful place that will answer all of your questions about these things. And honestly, like most of these tools have someone who's built a course or something on it. So interviews. I am not going to spend too much time talking about interviews. I'm going to introduce you to a guy named Steve Blank, and he is the guru of interviewing and doing customer discovery. Now, there's a free course online called How to Start a Startup, Udacity. You can go to Steve's website. There's tons of things about how to interview and how to get great at it. So if you have not ever talked to a customer, just Google customer discovery, and there's lots of SlideShare lectures and the like. Steve's lectures are terrific. I have some lectures that are online about it. But again, interviews, there's a lot of materials out there. Sketches and mockups is another great tool. Yeah, so these are all examples of actually creating sketches. Another one that I really like if you're an iPad person is actually called Paper. Paper 50 by 53 is terrific. We actually used it at Zarly to build our entire new version of our product. It's amazing. But anyway, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You're just drawing. You're just building sketches. You're building mockups. If you're actually trying to do something on mobile, one tool is called Envision app, which is quite good that I would recommend. It's pretty neat. You can do wireframes and clickable wireframes on mobile, so it's a pretty neat tool. But again, all that you're trying to do is get something out there that someone can look at. Now again, this is on you're actually building up to the product fidelity side. So these are things that you're doing that you're not going to get out there for millions of people. You're likely getting out for small groups. You've done interviews, they've said it's interesting, and maybe you do a mock-up and you show them something like that. You bring them an Excel report, whatever it might be. So the next one is actually doing an AdWords campaign. And this is one of the tools that, again, there's a lot of resources on this, but it is a terrific tool to understand if people actually search for what you think you're going to solve for them. So for example, if you're going to do a business that's going to help people rent musical instruments for whatever reason, that's what you want to do, and you believe it's important to advertise for that online, if people are going to click on your site, well, you better damn well test to see how many times people click on ads or how many times people search for musical instruments, and secondarily, how many times they click on an ad you run. So again, this is all about that idea of kind of coverage. How many people actually click on it? AdWords is an amazingly simple tool to use. You actually bid the price that you want to pay, and even you can use Facebook ads. But what you're looking for is to see the number of people that click, how much it costs for you to acquire a user so that you can understand. Turns out they'll click on this for about 10 cents per click, but they won't actually click on the buy button on the landing page, which we'll talk about next, for about it costs about $10 to get a user. Those are important numbers to know and test. Who here has ever done an AdWords campaign before? Yeah. Was it easy, hard?
It was very easy, and I was really impressed by the fact that Google called me multiple times to help me improve the ad. So it's something that I haven't taken advantage of their consulting side yet, but I thought they did a great job making it easy and then following up with me.
Yeah, it's easy to do. It's not hard. Facebook ads is another example. Super simple to do. You just link your credit card to it, and you set the amount that you want to do and test. So you can actually get $100 credit from Google for your first AdWords campaign, so there's no excuse for you not signing up for something like that and testing it. But again, it's a great way to understand, are people searching for what you think you're going to provide? And it's a great way to test along that edge of kind of coverage right there. So the key question to ask when you're doing an AdWords campaign is, how much would it cost for me to get a customer? That's really the key learning point that you want to do. The next one is really a landing page here, and this has double benefits to it. This was the first version of Zarly, by the way. This is the first thing that we built. Purely a landing page to collect email addresses. That was it. This whole system right here was run by a company called LaunchRock, and we basically just put the picture in the background, put a logo on, and put a little bit of text. This stuff works. We, by the time, over those 90 days from the time we actually kind of started the company to launch, we had 35,000 people give us their email address saying that they wanted to learn more about what we were doing. 35,000 pre-baked in customers on an idea. So again, this is an example of how simply to build a landing page. If you're interested in building a landing page, there's tons and tons of resources. Who's ever built a landing page before? Raise your hand. Okay. Simple, yes? I mean, it's super simple. There's no excuse for everyone here tonight not going out and setting up a landing page. What you're trying to do is build something super fast, something super simple that tells the story of what you're doing, and ultimately you're going to run AdWords at it, or social media at it, or whatever it is, and you're ultimately trying to see what goes on. So make sure that you put Google Analytics on the page, which will actually teach you what's going on the page here. So these are all super simple things to do, and again, I'm just giving you kind of some of the tips here and techniques, but all these tools are free and they're available online. Google Analytics is free, LaunchRock is actually free, setting up the domain hosting is like $10, it's very cheap. All of these things are things you can do just to have a sandbox. Two other things that I recommend on there that are really helpful learning lessons is, number one, dropping in a chat tool. Now there's a lot of interesting ones here that you can actually find for free. Again, just search for mobile chat tool or online chat tool. You will be amazed that you literally, it's just like an instant message. People will message you from your landing page. Hey, so I'm really interested in buying this stuff that you're selling here. And you're like, I don't even have a company yet. But people will literally try and message. It's amazing. I mean, it is the weirdest, coolest thing ever. People are like, so this awesome people message you from Singapore, all over the place. It's amazing. So put a chat piece on there, and you'll find that either people really find this to be interesting, or no one comes to your site, and then you've got another answer there. The other one is called, is do a survey tool on it. A good one is called Qualaroo. It's, again, a very cheap tool that will actually, after a few seconds, pop up and say, hey, we'd like to ask you a few questions about this site. Now, again, you guys might think like, oh, that's really annoying, but when it's your site, you're really interested to get their feedback on it. So, again, put these tools in here on a landing page. Now, there are a ton of great resources. God bless you. There are a ton of great resources on actually how to build a great landing page. This one is the one that I showed here. Very simple. The only purpose here was to test messaging and to test if they would give us their email address. But you can do more complicated ones about placing an order or whatever it might be. And just a hint here, oftentimes people on the internet will build sites that have a place order button and they have zero product behind it. All that they care about is seeing if you'll place the order. I've done this all the time just to understand, like, will the dog eat the dog food? Will you push place order? Even if you don't place order, I just want to know that you conceptually would have ordered if it would have worked. So the other one that I think is a great one here to use is the story of Dropbox. Who here is a user of Dropbox at all? Yeah. So Dropbox is this amazing story of this product that essentially launched as a video. They had this kind of concept for how they were going to allow you to kind of share files and kind of back up files here. But it was really complicated. They couldn't quite explain it. So what they did is they said, let's actually just make a video of how this concept would work. They didn't have a product yet. Drew had not built anything yet other than some back-end stuff, but they built this video. This video, or a version similar to it, is still the only thing on their homepage. Like, this thing works, and just in the matter of one day, they went from about 5,000 email signups, they put this video and they pushed it out there, to about 75,000 signups. So again, another example of spending a couple $100 to have someone build a video that talks about what your product could do and seeing if people thought it was interesting. This right here, this is an MVP. If you get 75,000 people to say, tell me when this product is available, it's a good sign that you might be onto something. So the other one is actually called, the other MVP that I really like to do is called competitor usability. So if you're building a product that is going to be a better version of someone else's product, what better to do than actually test what users don't like about the product that you're competing against? So to say that more clearly, you want to figure out what people hate about the competitor that you're trying to beat. So there's an example here of actually doing research on other people's sites to see how it will help your site. So I'm going to give an example of how a marketplace can learn from dating sites. It seems very strange, but my last company, we actually did usability testing on about 20 different dating sites to understand how it could help bizarrely better match people in the kind of two people meeting online to basically do a transaction in person. So we went out and actually tested all of these sites. And you can use certain tools. There's lots of different ways you can actually have people video test, or you can just ask your friends to use a site and sit over their shoulder and see how they use it. But some of the best learning we had was seeing what were the things that OkCupid did to actually make it more comfortable for a man and a woman who met online to go meet for coffee. And so again, just an example of, this wasn't exactly a competitor because we weren't competing against dating sites, but it's an example of finding a competitor and actually running people through it to see how it works and see what people think about it. Again, it's an MVP because you're learning to see, do people do what you want them to do just with using someone else's site? So there's a couple great systems online that are pretty reasonable to actually run video testing of random strangers online. So you can, again, Google video testing and you'll find some great people. But this is an MVP. I know it seems like, but wait, I didn't build anything. You just asked someone to go through it and watched. That's an MVP because you're learning how people use the status quo to see if you can do better. So the other one that I talked about before is called a Concierge MVP. Who here has ever heard of this term before, other than before I said it? Okay. So what a Concierge MVP is basically, I like to call it hustle as a product, or hustle as a service, I guess is the other way to describe it. Essentially what you are doing is you are building the product run by the human. It essentially is a concierge product that does what the software will eventually do, but you can't do it yet. So an example here is actually called Food on the Table, which was an Austin company that Eric Ries profiled in his book Lean Startup. The founder actually was interested in figuring out a way to help people get food prepared and on there and ordered and the grocery list delivered. So the company actually said, like, gosh, that's a lot of stuff to try and build. Why don't we see if we can just learn? And so they actually found someone in the course of their customer interviews who said, you know what, I would really like someone who could actually help me, sort my grocery list, order my groceries, check it in. And so he said, like, great, let's do it. And he put up this landing page right here and had her sign up. When she signed up, she thought she was getting some kind of a solution. It was literally the CEO running to the grocery store back and forth, bringing stuff to her house. I'm serious. That was it. That is called a Concierge MVP, where essentially you've convinced someone to say, will you buy this service or this product? And ultimately you're delivering it with humans, and you're delivering it kind of as a concierge would, as opposed to some magical software solution. So this is a perfect example of how you as a founder can actually say, hey, I've done a customer interview with you, and you've said that you have this problem, that you want to get fresh food in your house. What if we actually, could you actually use our service for that type of thing? Sign up for our new cutting edge software. It turns out that the cutting edge software is just you on a bicycle. That is called Concierge MVP. It's a great way to actually test what you want to build because you'll learn how it all works. So Concierge MVP is a great one to use. And again, as you see that one, on the axes, it goes up on the product fidelity one because it's actually a lot like your product will be. It just doesn't have any of the magical software behind it. So the other one that I really love is called the Wizard of Oz MVP. And I like to use the example, fake it until you make it. And this is probably a better one when you're doing products and things like that more so. But the best example of this is Zappos. Who here has used Zappos before? So $1 billion, the largest online shoe retailer headquartered in Las Vegas, was acquired by Amazon. It's huge. Turned out the first product they had literally was Tony Hsieh going into shoe stores and saying, hey, can I take a picture of these shoes? And they said, sure. So he took pictures of the shoes and then put up a simple website there. And then essentially he waited. He advertised and did stuff like that. He hadn't bought any shoes yet, just had taken pictures of shoes. And he waited until someone pressed place order and pay, and he would walk himself over to the shoe store, buy the shoes, put them in the mail, and send them. Wizard of Oz. Literally, there's nothing behind the magic curtain and the big wizard in front there, but a man pulling the strings. And that's what the Wizard of Oz is here. So it's a great example of, you don't necessarily know if your product's going to work or the solution's going to work, but fake it. Make it look like you've got massive amounts of inventory. And again, this is somewhat of an example of the kind of up the fidelity curve. Yes.
How long would you fake it?
Until you make it. Yes, I've been waiting to do that one. I think it was one of those things that you're ultimately going to figure out where's the point where you kind of as the founder break, So I oftentimes look at it as you want to figure out what's the point where you just like, I can't handle this anymore, I need to bring another partner or someone else. So there's a long time that you can fake it in these things. And again, Zarly as an example used the Filipinos to help us for over 9 months before we actually got rid of that. So that's a long time to be using help in this kind of stuff. So a blog to a startup is another great example here. Who has a blog here at all? Yeah. So a perfect example of this is actually Mattermark, who's actually started by a friend of mine named Daniel Morrill. And what they're trying to do is become the Bloomberg terminal of startups. And so Danielle's last startup failed, essentially. And she said, like, what am I going to do? So what she did is she said, you know what, I think it would be interesting if we could do a more data-driven way to help startups, to help people find startups to invest in. So what she did is she wrote over the course of 10 weeks, 89 blog posts. These 89 blog posts were articles that she wrote that she essentially used data that she'd taken from the web and actually helped rank and score various startups. 89 blog posts. By the end of the 10 weeks, when she'd had a huge audience, she had literally thousands of people reading each blog post. She literally put up a new blog post and she said, surprise, this is our startup, and unveiled this right here. So again, the whole idea here is she was actually selling the service through blog post articles long before she was doing it. And the other example is of a blog to startup is actually Groupon. Now, again, I know it may seem weird, but Groupon's first product was literally a WordPress blog that they would send people through. A little different, and they weren't writing blog posts, but they were using simple blogging software. And I'll talk a little bit later about how simple it can be to use a WordPress theme. So, email to startup is another terrific one right here. As I explained to you with Zarly, we had 35,000 people on our email listserv that we use. Turns out, people really like to read emails. As much as they say they hate getting emails, they will read emails and buy stuff if they're really interested in your product. So one great example of this is One Kings Lane, which does over $1 billion in transactions now in terms of selling furniture. Up until several months after they had started, purely as a way they would email every day, they would email a daily deal and it would open at this particular time. They didn't even have a web presence. There wasn't a way to see much behind the web other than kind of a simple landing page. They were email as a startup, and now they're doing $1 billion. So again, if you want to try and sell something, develop a list of people who might be interested and just email it to them. See how they react and engage. Again, perfect example of that. And for others, examples are Fab or others who've done kind of in the daily deal space, oftentimes started as kind of an email template was all they used. So another example is pre-selling or crowdfunding. Who here has ever bought something off of Kickstarter? Yeah? Did you ever get what you ordered?
Yeah.
Got it? Did you get what you ordered? Yeah. So the way that Kickstarter or these, a lot of these sites, Indiegogo or others work, is you actually essentially build an MVP that doesn't exist. It's a lot like the Wizard of Oz concept a little bit, where you're actually building this concept, and a good example here is this Pebble watch right here. So Pebble watch was a watch that actually can connect to your smartphone and kind of help you read email on it right there. But these guys hadn't built it. They had an idea for it, they thought it would be great, and so they posted it on Kickstarter. They posted a slick video with some example prototypes and designs of what they thought it was going to look like, and then posted it on Kickstarter. And the way that Kickstarter works essentially is you don't have to necessarily kind of ship a product or build a product unless it tips to a certain amount. So these guys said, once we raise $100,000 or something like that, then we'll start kind of working on building the product and delivering it. Turns out they were onto something. $10 million later that they raised, pre-selling watches, they wound up raising a bunch of venture capital and delivering the first version of Pebble watches earlier this year. So this is a perfect example of actually faking it until you're making it, or using the example of the kind of Wizard of Oz approach of actually putting out there what you think and seeing if people will give you money for it. If they're going to give you money for it, turns out that you might be onto something. So Kickstarter is a terrific example of an MVP, and there's other sites like it, but it's another great example. And the last one here for you is actually pre-built tools. So oftentimes people are like, oh, I want to build my own website, or oh, I want to build my own blog, or oh, I want to build my own whatever it is right here. Turns out there's a lot of great tools that can help you sell or showcase what you want to do. Some good examples here are Shopify, eBay, Etsy, and even Gumroad is another great one where you can literally do an ebook and basically sell an ebook through Twitter and use a tool like Gumroad. So these are all great tools of a way that you can basically sell something without really having to do much at all. Not any technology development, but these are great MVPs.